welcome in. We are live with Hockey Royalty Live, the official podcast of hockeyroyalty.com. QB55 getting that money. And we're going to be hitting here talking about it all night long. So get in the chat, like, and subscribe. Let's go. All right, boys. We're back. We had a little week vacay, during the slow season. Got to rest the vocal cords and the thought process. And the off season was just so bang, 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 bang. We got to take some time off the game here. But we are back because we said we would be back when we got some good news. And we got some good news with Quinton Byfield sign. We're going to be talking about that later on. But I hope there's some other good news with you guys. How you guys been?
I've been pretty good, Brandon. Yeah, like you said, it was like right after the season over, it was like bang, 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 like you said, with the draft, the free agency. I mean, it seemed like everything took place in like within a 2-week span, and then like there's just been like this, like the off season just hit like a wave, right? Like there's nothing going on everywhere, and it felt like that for the last couple of weeks or so. But I want to give a shout out to the world of soccer that's just given me so much fun and enjoyment over these last few weeks, because I'm not a big soccer guy. I've never really been one. But I guess over the last few years, I've kind of gained a lot more interest into it. I've always been a Galaxy guy. I don't know, LAFC, just LA soccer was always LA Galaxy to me. So I've always been Galaxy guy. But these past the Euro and the Copa America, man, like it's so nice like to have a full day. Like you wake up in the morning, it's like, okay, I got the Euro going on around 11, 12 o'clock here on the Pacific. And then I got Copa America in the afternoon, evening time. It was so fun watching those games. All the games were great. I've learned about some great young players that I probably would have never learned about. Lamine Yamal looks like the next Messi. He's incredible. So I'm sad it's over, but I know we got the Olympics coming up. So the sports are there. The sports are there. I've had a lot of fun. How about you, Joe?
Yeah, same. I was going to say, the Euros were a ton of fun. Somebody said a couple weeks ago, who's going to make a run? And I said England, and I had a couple comments in the chat. But that week, there was a weak draw. They made a run. Spain was so good. They were deserving winners. I mean, I for a while was into soccer and watching a ton of soccer up until really it was right up until 3.5 years ago when my second son was born. Then it just became so much harder to it's amazing when the second one comes. It was just so much harder to keep up with everything. I mean, I kept up with Everton, but my Serie A and Napoli have slipped a little bit. I was into NYCFC, that slipped a little bit. So, I'm trying to get
Napoli was getting Lukaku.
Romelu Lukaku, absolutely. Yeah. And as an Everton fan, he was, he was big for the Toffees back in the day before they sold him. So yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I mean, I'm going to try to make it a point, and these two tournaments, Copa and the Euros, I'm trying to get reinvigorated and make sure that I do a better job this upcoming year. Because these last few years, I've been a fan. It's just been more on the periphery, where I was knee deep for years before that. So I hopefully get back into, because there's like you said, Russ, there was one time I remember it was years ago. But I think it was either during the World Cup or there was the same type of thing. It was Euros and Copa going on at the same time. And I remember waking up in the morning and there was bang, bang, bang. The game every 2-3 hours, there was a game for whatever tournament in Europe was going on. Mm-hmm. Then there was MLS that night there was a back-to-back. And it was just literally an entire day of soccer. It was incredible. I mean, the sport gets a bad rap a lot of times. I know it's gotten way more popular in this country, and it's not what it is in the rest of the world, but man, it's incredible. If you find a team to get into, especially the Premier League, there's just so much drama around the Premier League.
And it's the fans that make it you can feel the environment through the TV. Yeah. That's what makes it so fun.
Yeah, it's nuts. I mean, I'm partial to the Premier League and to Italy, but the Bundesliga in Germany, incredible atmospheres, incredible atmospheres. I mean, I like the French league. It's just so top heavy. Spain is obviously like there's great leagues over in Europe. I'm just partial to England and Italy, but like I said, there's other great leagues that you watch it. It's just a totally different environment and atmosphere, and I like the MLS. Don't get me wrong. I do like soccer here. It's just the quality is not quite as good, but the entertainment value isn't that much less, I would say. Like, yes, the quality isn't the same, but doesn't mean it's not lacking for entertainment or drama or things like that. So
absolutely.
I can't, echo the soccer sentiments anymore.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Brandon.
I think we lost our host though.
Yeah.
Well, I was glazed over. No, I mean, I watched the Euro final, and then I didn't watch the Copa America. I was doing something else. But what about all the drama with that game? Like people climbing in through air ducts and breaking past security. There was so many people. I was looking at interviews like, oh, we spent $45,000 on our tickets and couldn't even see the game because the gates got overrun or whatever with people.
There were like people sitting in their seats and they're like, no, we're not leaving. Like sorry.
Yeah. Like, and I don't know what Ticketmaster or whatever is going to do about that, if anything. But could you imagine spending $15,000, $10,000, $45,000 and not being able to see the game? Like, that'd be
that was a tough look. That was a tough look.
And that stadium is hosting in 2026 for the World Cup. So maybe a peek into soccer mania and how it is down there. I mean, I know the NFL is playing games in Brazil, and they said neither team can wear green, even though both the teams that are playing have green in their color scheme, which makes no sense by the NFL. But it's like, yeah, you risk getting shot or you risk gang warfare.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. The Eagles and the Eagles and
Packers.
Packers, yeah.
Yeah. So it's just crazy. It's just crazy there, and I'm excited for the World Cup. I mean, it was good. I'm not a soccer fan. I don't have any horse in the race. I don't have a team. I like Wrexham because I like Ryan Reynolds.
Yep.
But other than that, I really don't care. I just wanted a good game, and it was a good game. I mean, England made a push.
Yep.
There was that ping pong header play, which I thought would have went in.
Yeah.
And but it was good. And then obviously I'm wearing the Pittsburgh hat because Paul Skeens dominated this year. First rookie to ever start, or not first ever, but first in a while to start an All-Star game. He went 6-0 with a 1.90 ERA, and then dominated the All-Star game as well. What a year he's having, right?
Holy crap.
Yeah.
National championship, dating a gorgeous supermodel gymnast from LSU and just dominating at the MLB level right away. It just couldn't have a better year for him.
Yeah, seriously.
Mm-hmm.
But and then I got the old school Pirates hat on.
I do like that. That's fantastic.
They have a good young team blooming up there.
I thought they'd be a little better. I honestly thought they'd be a little better this year. They've been a little disappointing for me. Yeah. Because like you, I kind of like them. Russ.
It's their shortstop. What's their shortstop? He's having
Cruz?
O'Neal Cruz. He's kind of having a slow start. I think he needs, or I could be wrong, but they've got good young talent there. They'll be good.
They should be a little bit better, but hopefully, they've got with Jones. Jones is hurt, but then they've got Skeens up. So we'll see what happens if they.
It's our Yankees and Dodgers that I'm worried about, Joe. This is what's going on here. It seems like since they played each other, it's like
it does.
Terrible now.
I know. I mean, this is the Yankees have been going through this for a bit now, and I don't know. It's we'll see. They haven't done much in recent trade deadlines, so I don't know what they're going to do. But it's definitely a funk, and it ain't good. Both, and to your point, both teams. I mean,
Dodgers have their injuries, but even then, the games they're losing have just been god awful.
Yeah, not good.
Oh well.
But you know what is good? Byfield's contract, and that's what we're here to talk about. So
that is right.
So QB 55 scores a deal. It was right in between the two deals that we were talking about. We thought we discussed on our tinfoil hat episode what a short deal would look like, positive and negatives, what a long deal would look like. And I think one of us mentioned that it might have been, probably somewhere in the middle. That's something good for the team, keeping the AAV low, as well as getting him to be a free agent that's in the prime of his career so he could cash in. That man might be wearing a Pirates hat right now. I'm not sure. But what do we think about this? I mean, let me get to for people who don't know, or maybe we're camping for the last week. It's 5 years, 31.25 million total, 6.25 million per. What do you guys think about the deal? And kind of how do you guys feel about the contract as a whole, Russ?
The first thing that came to mind, or the first thing I saw when I saw the deal get announced, was the term, right? I mean, the 5 years immediately pops out because it was never really something that anyone really considered except our man Randon here. But I mean, you think about it, like it just, at first you think about it as an RFA, especially a young RFA at his age, is only 21 years old. The main, I guess, concept with these first young deals is you want to preserve that RFA status if you're going to go short term with a 2 or 3 year deal. So that way he stays a restricted free agent once that deal is over. Or you just go really long term, like 7 or 8 year deal that we've seen some other young talents sign, like Slavkovsky in Montreal, who just recently signed. But to see the 5 years, it was caught off guard. Like, oh man, that's kind of, I don't know who wins there. And then you kind of dive a little bit deeper, and then you see the 5 years. And then you see the AAV that you mentioned tied to it at only 6.25 million. And like, I just immediately think it's just a win for both sides. Byfield, he gets to cash in once again as a UFA at only 26 years old. Once the season's over, and then it'll start 2029, and he'll start as a 27-year-old. But he's also getting a little bit more stability, as well as the team is getting a little stability as well. They're not getting, I'm sure they wanted to negotiate a longer term deal. I'm sure a short term deal was never on the table. That's kind of what I thought. But I think if you're thinking about it as like, oh, maybe there's like some worry at the end that he could possibly leave as a UFA. Well, you could probably have that. We could have that same worry if he's a RFA at the end of his deal, just by judging about what other players have done in the past. I mean, look at what Matthew Tkachuk did in Calgary. Pierre-Luc Dubois did it in Winnipeg. All these RFAs are starting to gain a little bit more control over their future and letting the teams know about it. I mean, even college players are doing it now with Rutger McGroarty. Who even knows where he's going to go? So I think you have to look at it like a win at both sides. I mean, I'm sure the Kings would have liked him at an 8-year deal, but to get him signed at 5 years, which is a very long time, it's still a long time, 5 years at only a cap hit of 6.25 million. I mean, this is going to look like arguably one of the better value deals across the NHL by year 3, 4, 5, or maybe even starting next year, judging by how Byfield could play. So, I mean, my only takeaway is just a win for both sides.
You're 100% correct there. In Dom Lucian of The Athletic, his graph says Byfield's projected value is 8.6 million next year, and will continue to increase on his trajectory to be closer to 11.5 million and 28-29. So you're talking about an average value of 10.2 projected value, and he's getting paid 6.3. This could be one of the biggest steals in the National Hockey League, Hunjo.
Yeah, I mean, from an AAV standpoint, like this I think he should comfortably exceed 6.25 this year, this upcoming year, and then well beyond that. And, assuming he goes as everybody projects him to go, he could very easily double this salary, this AAV, when this deal's up and it's time for him to sign his next deal. So this is an excellent deal in terms of the AAV. The term, listen, I am like, I always want to sign my young stars to 8-year deals. Obviously, I don't know if Byfield, if that was ever of interest for him. I mean, it's entirely possible and reasonable and understandable that he would want to make sure he has an opportunity to get to UFA if that's an option. So, I'm not like losing sleep over the fact that it wasn't a full term deal as much as I would have wanted that, just because I know that can be tricky. But that was my goal. My hope was this is an 8-year deal, even if it is 8x8 type of thing, like, or even if it did push to like 8.5, I still think he can get to that again this year. So like, I don't know if something like that was ever on the table. The perfect deal for me would have been like 7 by 7.5, but I would have done any of those. But again, understanding that the likelihood and all that stuff. The player is going to want to maximize his value. I totally understand that. So all things considered with that, from a value standpoint on this, if I just look at this contract on its own in isolation, it's very good. We live in a salary cap era though. And so it isn't really in isolation. It is an entire package. And it was so hard for me to not go immediately sour, because the whole point of having great value contracts is it allows you to fill out your roster, right? Like we talked about this with the Bruins and the Penguins, and like you're getting these great value contracts, and that allows you to fill out your roster with depth players. That's just not what the Kings are doing. Like, so they save this money, and that's great. Like they're getting Byfield at a steal. Like we can acknowledge that, but it's what you do with that. And so far, what have they done with it? They signed Joel Edmondson to 3.8. So now you have Gavrikov, Edmondson, and a goalie who has been said is going to be a tandem, eating up nearly $15 million. So, okay. It's like, I can't help but
two of those moves. I guess all those moves happened before Quinton Byfield. And Joe,
but my point is I think it's all like, were they not able to go longer and bigger term on Byfield because they had these contracts in place? That's speculation by me. I'm not saying that is the case, but if that is the case, it's like, and it's not as if Kemper is coming off the books. It's not as if Edmondson's coming off the books. So what are you, and it's just, I get it. You should be excited about Byfield being here. You should be excited because his AAV is a steal, but forgive me if I'm not going to be confident if this front office is going to be able to take advantage of that savings. Because here's the thing, like the fact that Byfield is coming in at 6.25. Okay. That's a steal, but chances are like 8 probably would have been a steal pretty soon too, or even 8.5. And you know what? Paying Byfield an extra $2 million. Let's say, for example, he signed 8 by 8.25. Let's say it was $2 million more over 3 more years. That is not what hurts you. Paying your top end players 8.25 is not what's going to hurt you. It's paying players that aren't worth the money you're paying them. That is what sinks you. So I don't want to say it doesn't matter, but it really takes away how great of a steal this contract is when you're paying other guys so much more than they're worth. It just totally offsets it, and it's just a total waste. And that's what it leaves a sour taste in my mouth. It has nothing to do with Byfield. It has nothing to do with the Byfield contract. It has everything to do with what Rob Blake has done kind of with the roster build around it. And that makes me very frustrated because you got a steal of a contract and you can't even take advantage of it.
Joe seems, even after a week, he's still pretty salty. I think he maybe needed 2 or 3 weeks off to feel better about a couple of the contracts handed out here. Dominic comes in here with a point that I was about to make is 5 years from now, the cap should be over, 100 million, let's say, or whatever. Right. Maybe this had the factor. And like you said, for the length of the term had a factor in what Byfield is saying. Hey, Byfield's like, okay, I'm going to bet on myself. I'll take the lower AAV now. I'm going to bet on myself. I'll be 26. The cap should be over 100K, and I could make 13 million, 14 million a year.
I expect it.
And so, everybody throws around, we should have went 8 by 8.25. But like you said, mentioned briefly, Joe, what if Quinton Byfield's like, hey, I'm betting on myself.
Yep.
And you see it all the time. I saw, you see it all the time with players like, hey, no, I'm gonna take a prove it deal, or I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna go in, and then there's a chance that he doesn't live up to that. But in his mind, he's like, okay, I can make 8.25 now, or I can make 6, which is still life-changing money for a 21-year-old.
$31 million deal.
Yeah. And then potentially make 14, 15 million on a team that may have won a cup by that point. And he plays huge minutes. Like, I think that everybody has got to realize that there's more to these negotiations than what can be done on shell. Right. And if Quinton Byfield's like, okay, like I don't want to do a 3-year deal because then maybe that's only 4 or 5 million. I'd like to be here a while. but I also want to get out in time to capitalize on that investment. I'm giving you a little bit of discount on the AAV because of the salary cap issues that we have. And in return, I want to get out in time to capitalize on being a UFA.
Like Russ said, like Russ had said, you said, a short-term deal that might have even never been on the table, like from a King standpoint. And from Byfield's standpoint, maybe an 8-year deal was just never on the table. 7-8-year deal just wasn't on the table for him because he wanted to make sure that he got UFA at an appropriate age. And you get that, right? You understand that. And so, I think that's entirely possible.
Yeah, I wonder what the negotiation was, because it seems like, even just from listening to you guys, the more I think about it, it certainly seems like Byfield maybe just wanted the shorter term, and maybe the Kings actually wanted the longer term, and they just kind of met in the middle here. Because the Kings do end up buying an extra year of that UFA, of a UFA year of Byfield, so there's that in it. But like Brandon said right at the hop here, we had been discussing either long term or short term, but there was never this thought process of them meeting in the middle at like 4, 5, 6 years. So it certainly seems like maybe this is where the negotiations ended, saying, hey, you want short term, we want long term, let's just go right in the middle and go 5 years here, right? And there's a ton that could happen in 5 years, right? There's so much. You think about, like, you talked about, Joe, the flexibility, and like I agree with you. Like a lot of it this year, you saved a ton in terms of probably Byfield's flexibility maybe this year, like maybe $2 million at least, as opposed if you would have signed like a Sapkowski kind of deal that he got. But you didn't really do anything with that because you had to take on Kemper's contract by getting rid of Byfield. you had to sign Edmondson.
The deadline. You need money at the deadline. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. There's that. Yeah, because there is a little bit of flexibility. They still got to re-sign Spence. We don't know what's going to happen with Kalia, but yeah, they could go into the season with $2 million. It's not a ton, but it's definitely more than what they had last year. But I think I look at it more like, you look at next year. I'm looking at next season after that, then 25, 26. The Kings are projected to have like close to like $20 million in cap space with Gavrikov off, Provorov's retentions coming off. And that's with like a ton of like really key players already signed. And Kopitar's the last year of his contract, Kempe, Byfield now, Deneau, like all these players, and you're going to have a ton of cap space to work with that year. So I'm wondering, like just in totality, like I'm wondering if Rob Blake and the Kings are kind of looking at this year coming up as like okay, this is going to be like our first like real like play the kids year, where we got to really get them involved in every game and every moment and every kind of key situation, and kind of use this year as like a development year, sort of say. Not necessarily like they're not going to try to win, because I fully think that this team can be a playoff team. But every time we hear Rob Blake, he's mentioning Alex Turcotte, Akil Thomas, and Brant Clark. He's mentioning those three players that he wants to get them into the lineup. And we've never really heard Rob Blake talk like that before. He's always mentioned like, oh, we got to just like fill roster spots here and there. Maybe if the young players come up, we got to just keep them healthy. Like, it is what it is. But now he's fully implementing them into the roster for this entire year. And then I wonder what happens the year after that, where now he has the ultimate flexibility to upgrade this team how he pleases and see what he does there. But this year should be interesting, though. I'm still excited for it, but I think my expectations are a little bit more tempered as they would be if they maybe made some different moves here and there.
If you're right, like if that's the whole thought here from Blake, he's 2 years too late. Like that, the time to do that was when you hadn't yet established yourself as a team that was ready to kind of take a next step and like be that playoff team. This whole thing was supposed to be done 2 years ago, but now you're a team that's made the playoffs 3 years in a row. The goal now is to take that next step. So now you're going to say, let's run it in with the kids. I mean, I'm here for it. That's fine. Where was this 2 years ago? I mean, it's just a total swing and miss. You may be right. It's just a little backwards, because the whole goal, I thought, after the season was, how the hell do we get past the first round? So
to play devil's advocate, Joe, though, you look at 2 years ago, Byfield was 19, right? Like, I mean, not ready to accept huge minutes. Him playing on the wing helped him do that. Turcotte was injured. Akil Thomas was injured.
There were some injuries for sure that didn't.
Spence wasn't ready to play at an NHL level all year long. He came on, in the playoffs and everything like that. So maybe when it says play the kids, is now all these guys are ready to play. And I mean, we have two, according to Puckpedia, We have $2.9 million. Right now we have 22 out of 23 roster spots. We have $2.9 million. So, what if Spence gets a 3x2 and then we get Kaliev at $900K and you're getting extreme value there on that type of deal? I think this all works out. I know the Joel E deal is you're questioning my numbers there, Joe. What's going on?
What? No.
Oh, you're looking at me like you're questioning me.
No,
my numbers.
No. You're good.
Or you're about to say something. Anyways,
I was, but I'll let you finish your thought.
Okay. Yeah, there's some contracts that we all regret already, but if we get Spence to a palpable deal, maybe we resign Kaliev for 900 or we trade him away. Like, what if they trade Kaliev away and Spence is a 4x3.5? Like, and you're looking at, okay, for the next 4 or 5 years, we got a lot of these players that are going to be playing top minutes at discount prices, right? And that's future GM's problem to deal with that when the cap comes up. But for the next couple of years, we got a palpable team that can make some moves. Also, there's the trade deadline. I mean, I'm still not a fan of trading the pick. If you look at our draft episodes, to go back and watch those, we went from like 25th overall in our prospect pool. Now we're about 15th just by having a first round pick. So Liam Greentree is going to do wonders. We got George in the pipes there. So, I still want to replenish that a little bit, but if that first round pick means a real difference maker and for a long term, not a rental, I'm also down for that as well. So I think there's a lot more movement. I think being sour about some of the contracts and the identity of the team, we want more of a upbeat team, puck moving, exciting. And that's just not the team that we're rooting for at the moment. That's not the team that they want it to be. Yeah. How long that stays, I have no idea. But right now, I think this contract wins for both people. It wins for the Kings in the short term. It wins for Byfield. Because if you look at Tim Stützle, I'm pulling up his contract right now. You're looking at he doesn't turn a free agent until he is 29 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Not saying that he still won't be in his prime, but like, what if he signed a 5-year deal and he's already averaged over 70 points?
That's a great deal for Ottawa, more so than I don't want to say Stützle getting $70 million.
No, but,
is a bad deal.
but that's solely a good deal for Ottawa. That's not really maximizing it from Stützle's standpoint.
Agreed.
So I think the Kings did what was good for Byfield and good for the team at the moment. Do I want an 8x7 or some steal of a deal where we're hauling in the street? Sure.
Yeah.
But realistically, it is what it is at the moment. They're trying to piece together a championship. So with Kopitar, they're trying to play for the future. I think this contract does both.
The peaks and valleys of this offseason, sorry, real quick, just peaks and valleys of this offseason have been so funny. It's like, oh, that's great. I love it. Oh, that's horrible. I hate it.
The valleys hurt way more than the peaks are highlighting right now. That's
Joe's in Death Valley, brazen 130-degree heat right now.
Like, my excitement was like 3 seconds long when I saw the Byfield contract. And then I'm like, oh, wait a minute. They can't even utilize the savings because I want to go back to something that.
Let's go with that, Joe, for a bit. What if this contract gets done before the draft in free agency? Does the free agency look different, or do you think the Kings know that Byfield's going to sign somewhere around here, or how the contracts are going, and they made the signings accordingly? But what if you had that in ironclad ink? Does that offseason go differently?
I don't think so, just because it was pretty evident they wanted Joel Edmondson, right? Yeah. That seemed to be pretty evident that somehow there's an NHL GM that wants Joel Edmondson at that term and AAV in the year 2024, but that was the case. I want to go back to something that Russ said, because we've talked about it on this show for kind of months now, is Vladislav Gavrikov's contract. And I said, hey, if you want to open up space this summer, maybe that's an under talked about possibility of a trade. He makes a lot of money for what he does, but he's got the no move clause. But there's, but we've then since talked about, his contract comes off the books, or is it? Why are we assuming he's not coming back? Listen, let's just get it out there now. And I've been guilty of this more than anybody on this podcast. I've talked about Oliver Shillington and Marcus Pettersson and Mike Matheson and Chickering. Go down the list. Go down the list, right? Of all of these guys that I've talked about. The Kings don't value those players, okay? They value the guys like Edmondson and Vladislav Gavrikov. That is cut and dry. So why are we going to just assume that Gavrikov's not going to be around? I was thinking along those lines that that the Kings may have a shift after losing for the third year in a row to a team they were totally outclassed by, that I thought maybe we'll see a shift in philosophy and they're going to need to do some things different from a personnel standpoint, but they're not. They're doubling and tripling and quadrupling down on what doesn't work. So why are we going to just assume Gavrikov isn't going to be back? Because now why would that, unless Blake is out, right? Unless Blake is out and there's a different management system in there that's making these personnel decisions, I'm at this point, I'm half expecting a 5x5 deal for Gavrikov to be announced in like February or something. Like I don't know that savings that we've got from Byfield is going to be utilized in an appropriate fashion. And what I mean by that is it's already being abused with Edmondson and Kemper. And I know they were done before, but I don't think that, like, I feel like you had a decent idea of what you're getting Byfield at. Like, it's not as if these conversations started yesterday.
You know what I have a decent idea about is how to bet on DraftKings. And we'll get back to your thought there, Joe, but let's get to our road from our sponsor here. DraftKings Sportsbook. Bet on the action on the ice as well as off it at DraftKings Sportsbook. Lines are out already for the off season here. You're looking at the division winner for the Pacific has Edmonton at plus 125. Your Kings are at plus 500. And if you feel like throwing a dart throw at the Sharks, plus 25,000 to win the division there for your odds here at DraftKings. Download the app now. Use code THPN. New customers can get $150 instantly in bonus bets for betting just $5 on hockey. That's code THPN only on DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of the NHL. This crown is yours. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPENY or text HOPENY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for people with gambling problems. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort. 21 age varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. See dkng.com/hockey for eligibility and restrictions, terms, responsible gaming resources. NHL and NHL Shield are registered trademarks of the National Hockey League. Copyright NHL 2023-2024. All rights reserved.
Brandon, can I just say, and it's because I'm in New York that you guys probably wouldn't even know this. When you say Hopeny every time, I get a kick out of it. It's actually Hope NY.
Oh, okay.
But I'm like, you know what? He probably doesn't know that because he's in Texas. Why would he know that?
I have zero idea. So thank you for correcting me. And I'm surprised we haven't had one New York better say anything about it.
On me. I'm like, he probably has no idea. But anyways, do you see where I'm going with that though? Like, yeah, that's cool. We got this savings for Byfield, but if we use it by just re-upping Gavrikov, because remember, let's rewind a little bit. We gave all this credit to Rob Blake for the Cal Peterson contract, getting out of that, right? By dumping assets. And then what was the point of that contract? Remember? To sign Gavrikov. And let me rephrase that, to overpay Gavrikov. Okay. So we just talked about how everybody gave him a lot of credit for getting out of the PL Dubois contract, which, okay, again, I will die on the hill that I think he was a better player. What didn't go well, whatever. Okay, got out of the contract, fine. You brought in $5 million of a goaltender that you admitted is going to be in a tandem. That's a waste of money. Okay, then you had his whole performative press conference and the whole uncomfortable, which was just such a laughable. And so, like, again, as much as I'm happy for Byfield and happy that he's here, it's so hard for me to really be all gung-ho about it on the whole when I look at the whole picture, because we've given Rob Blake a lot of credit for stuff that he's either undone or done poorly, and then he's turned around and done mind-numbingly stupid moves, i.e. Edmondson being one of them. So I just don't know. Like, I love the contract.
Well, let's
I just
flip
don't
this to
know.
a something that might be positive, Joe. And look, what about this? We just signed last year second line center that potentially could be a first line center for $8.5 million. What if we're getting a second line center and perhaps a first line center for $6.25 million? What if the value is so much that it compensates for the other moves on the ice? No GM hits 100% of the moves, and obviously you have a lot to be upset about. We all do, about the direction of this team and the identity that they want to have.
Mm-hmm.
But we're talking about value contracts, and those come from players like Akil Thomas and Alex Turcotte this year. Well, what if Quinton Byfield has 85 points? That 6.25 is nothing at that point.
Yeah, that's what I mean. The 6 point, again, I want to make sure I'm clear, because I know I hate being, the negative one or whatever, but I want to be clear. The Byfield value is going to be a steal as early as this year. Like, I'm not doubting that in the slightest. It just leaves a sour taste in your mouth, because you're supposed to be able to take advantage of signing a player of this caliber for this many years to this good of a deal. You're supposed to be able to take advantage of that and fill out your roster with quality players. And that is where Blake isn't doing a good job, in my opinion. And that's his fault for evaluating certain players a certain way.
Well, look at the other young players now that they're hoping to get value out of now. I think that's where he's going to have his sights set on, because you have now Alex Turcotte, who knows what he could be. I mean, even if he's a bottom six centerman, that's still pretty good value at what? League minimum for 3 years. Cool. You have Brandt Clark still on his rookie deal. So you got to have to figure out value there. If he can be the Brandt Clark that we all expect him to be, that could be excellent, a home run. Then you have LaFerriere. I believe he's got one more year left, though. So after that, it's probably not going to be that much. And then
Spence should be great. Spence should be a great value too.
And that's another one too. We should talk about Spence, because I've seen some people mention it to me, and I saw a Trapper mention in the chat. For me, if they need to spend, they should sign Spence to like a 6-year deal, 7-year deal, because I don't think you're going to find a better, maybe second, third pair defenseman, depending on what's going on. Because we all obviously doubt he's going to be around. Brandt Clark's here. So if you can have Jordan Spence in the system as a third pair right shot defenseman for like $3.5 million for 6 years, that's incredible value. Because then now you all of a sudden, like I mentioned earlier, you have that 20+ million in cap space. That's not even including what the cap will turn into next year. I mean, that's where they're going to have to figure out a way to kind of, okay, now we're going for it. And I remember someone mentioning this to me when Kopitar signed his extension, his 2-year extension. And they said, that second year of Kopitar's deal is when they're really going to go for it. And it certainly seems to be the case right now, because this roster doesn't look like a Stanley Cup roster going into this year. Nobody, I don't think anybody would pick them to win the Stanley Cup with the roster they have right now. But if you get a really solid year of Brandt Clark, first year in the NHL, you get Alex Turcotte showing himself as a bottom line centerman, and you have Akil Thomas, Alex LaFerriere, other good young players, and then you have another year of Jordan Spence and Quinton Byfield now playing first line center or whatever, center minutes, wherever he's playing. Then you go into next year, you after having all those players. Let's see what happens at that point, because that's where Rob Blake's going to have to make his money worth. I mean, I don't know how many more excuses we have to give him. I mean, even though we're not the one giving him excuses, it seems like management's above him's giving the excuses. But that's got to be the year he's got to really take advantage of all this flexibility he now has after all these mistakes he himself created.
Yeah, and you're right, and there's a lot of opportunity for value in all those young players. I think that's the rosy outlook, though. Like Akil Thomas and Alex Turcotte haven't played full seasons in, I don't know when the last time was. It certainly hasn't since they've been pro. So I think we're a little optimistic if we think they're going to step in and play 80 games, right? So I think they have to be effective and play 80 games. Like, I think that's asking a lot. I'm hopeful, because I think both players are I think Thomas has the higher upside in terms of production. I don't know if you guys agree with that, but I think Thomas has a higher offensive production upside. But
I agree with that, because I think they fully believe Turcotte's a centerman, and
Yeah.
I feel like they're going to give Thomas more opportunity on the wing, higher up in the line.
I can see that, and I think even still, like to your point, Russ, even if Turcotte is a fourth line, like say he's Blake Lizotte, that's fine. Like obviously it's not what you drafted, but it is what it is at this point. And if he becomes a fourth line NHLer or bottom six NHLer that's effective, great. Like that's valuable, especially at that contract. It's just these guys have been serious injury issues for over the last few years. So I don't think we can just gloss over that and think that that's going to happen. There is risk there. Clark should have played last year. I think so. When I go back to saying, you're 2 years too late, Clark should have played last year. That was a miss. So now he's going to get really his first full season this year. So what he could have learned, quote unquote, last year, he's going to have to do on the fly this year. Again, that's on the organization, but you're right. I mean, there is potential for these young kids to really blossom. And I think we're all excited about that. And there's optimism, but I guess I'll be the one again to pour the cold water and say, let's just remember though, 2 of these guys have been hurt a significant amount and one of them is going to be first year. So I'm just trying to be balanced.
Joe, let's test your cold water. Because as always, I like to play a game. Let's do the PFF plus minus system. I'm going to go down the lineup, name player and their contract value, and you give me a gunshot plus or minus if you think that contract is a value.
Okay.
And we'll see where we end up on a full roster.
Okay.
All right. So let's pull it up here. We got Kevin Fiala at 7.87.
Plus.
Plus. Yeah.
Anze Kopitar at 7.
Plus.
I'd say plus.
Yeah.
Because of his 2. Yeah. Plus.
We already say Quinton Byfield at 6.2 is a plus.
Yes, for sure. Plus.
Philip Deneau at 5.5.
I'll say he's about even, maybe lean plus.
Okay. Adrian Kempe at 5.5.
Plus.
Trevor Moore at 4.2.
Plus.
Warren Fogle at 3.5.
I feel like I think that's probably about right.
Okay. I mean, neutral place fine.
I'll say neutral.
I would have said more is even, but I'll give
okay.
And I'll give Fogle plus.
Okay. Tanner Jeannot 2.6.
Minus.
Okay. Alex Laferriere 8.75.
Plus.
Trevor Lewis 800.
Minus.
Okay. Akil Thomas 7.75.
Plus.
Alex Turcotte 7.75.
Plus.
Drew Doughty 11.
Minus.
Gavrikov 5.87.
Minus.
Mikey Anderson 4.1.
About right.
Okay. Joel Edmondson 3.8. We already know that answer. Brant Clark league minimum.
Plus.
Okay. So and then whatever Jordan Spence is, I know
plus. I think it's gonna be a plus. Yeah.
Goaltender David Rich 1 million.
Great.
And
I'll say
Darcy,
it's like that's like I say great, not plus. I think he's like that's right on.
Okay. Then Darcy Kemper 5.2.
Minus.
Okay. So with all the plus minuses there, the Kings are a +5 in value in their contracts. Yeah. So it looks,
which is weird because like 9 forwards were pluses, which tells you a lot about the back end.
So I think that you're looking at if there's a lot of these guys that can exceed their value. Yeah, it's still Joel Edmondson and just like Englund was last year are going to be negative. But can we get enough of that value? No team is having 100% value. I mean, the Edmonton made it to the Stanley Cup, and they have Darnell Nurse making $100 million a year. So, I think what it is yeah, you're so upset with Joel Edmondson. I get it, and then you have to correct for what a lot of people thought was a bad signing in PLD for Darcy Kemper. You have to make up for mistakes. So yeah, like you said, the valleys are bad, but I think there's a lot of positive things going on with this team. And overall they're a +5.
Well, let me flip this though. Like, because what if, and this is maybe getting into the weeds a little bit here, because it's how much more, right? Like, I think, if go back to, I don't know, say Turcotte and Thomas are, because they're league minimum, right? Basically,
Yeah.
What if they exceed their value? But what if they get left if their value is like 1.5? Like they're exceeding it, but not by like a significant amount. Whereas
or they don't get roster time because of what happened last season with,
or they get hurt,
and you're only a +3, right?
But then conversely, if you look at Gavrikov's at 5.8, but really he's actually like 3, or Edmondson at 3.8, and he's really at like league minimum. Like those are big negatives versus the positives. That's kind of where I'm at with that. Your overall point is fair though, Randon.
I think it's like, because we looked at all. I mean, you're right. Like all the forwards, like there's so much value at the forward position for the Kings that they have signed. Fiala, Kempe, Deneau, like now Byfield. But I mean, 2/3 of your defensive pairing now is filled with players that just aren't working right now for the team.
It's
or
50%.
Haven't shown that they can be quality defenders, really, even in the NHL the last few years, but now are getting paid like they should be, or even more so. And that's where it's like the negative impact is so much more severe than what those positive impacts can provide. And I think that's where there's so much more concern, because how much can Brandt Clarke and Jordan Spence really elevate the play of those players? I mean, we saw Jordan Spence do it with England, and I think I would say that Edmondson's a better player than England. I wouldn't have Edmondson at his contract compared to England, but
that's
in isolation, without the contracts, he's
Agreed.
a better player.
That's fair.
So how much better can him and either Brandt Clarke or Jordan Spence be together as a pairing, like, than what they had last year? It's weird because you look at like the comparison of last year's roster with so much lofty expectations of what had happened the 2 years before. Like, oh, this is the year they're going to go for. Like, they got to win playoff series. And you look at this year's roster, I could make an argument that it's probably better, to be honest with you. I mean, you had Andreas Englund play 82 games on the left side, who never played 82 games in his entire career in the NHL. You just dragged Jordan Spence down, and now you're pretty much replacing him with Edmondson, and you're replacing Matt Roy with Brandt Clarke. I mean, and you look at their third line center now, who's more than likely going to be Quinton Byfield, could be second line center or whatnot. I would say Quinton Byfield as a centerman is probably an upgrade over what you got over Pierre-Luc Dubois last year. So, I mean, your big loss is really Victor Arvidsson, and he only played 18 games last year. So, I mean, it's really going to be impacted with how these young players impact the roster as to where this team's going to go. And the surprising part about it is that he hasn't really filled any other, like, he hasn't really signed anybody else in terms of depth forwards. I mean, so it's like you said, Joe, if Alex Turcotte gets hurt, who's coming in the game? Is it Fagemo? Is it Andre Lee? Is it Samuel Hellenius? So it's like, is he really going to lean into these young players coming in? Or are we going to see like another like 7.75 depth signing NHL guy that's going to come in? Like, I don't even know who's out there, but that's where I'm wondering if there's still a one signing left that Rob Blake goes, because I don't see Andre Lee making the team or even being part of the roster. I don't see like a Hellenius even making the roster, being part of the NHL this year. So I'd be surprised if Fagemo is like the last skater that he brings along with him on these trips or whatnot. But I would think there's another depth option there available.
I just think it's a good thing to kind of keep in mind. I mean, you look at the amount of value that we could possibly get from the forward group or the young defenseman, might be something to overcome the negative. And I wonder what the Dom Lucian value of the contracts will be midway through the season or after the season, to see if we were in fact a plus minus on this team. It would be an interesting exercise to run, and if it goes negative, Joe always has, something to go with our new sponsor here at BetterHelp. So Joe can go get some therapy, and this show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Whether you are about therapy or not, it's always good to reach out to somebody. I know we're a little late, but in June was Men's Mental Health Month, and I know a lot of people struggle maybe to talk to somebody or don't have anybody to talk to. But here at BetterHelp, you can go out there and get somebody to bounce your thoughts off of. And I know my good friends, that's what I do when I reach out to them is bounce my thought off, make sure that you are in sound mind and get you, some help or assistance, or just even going through your thought process if need be. And I know that I've had many friends benefit through their therapy. And I'm looking forward to maybe trying BetterHelp in now that they're a sponsor of ours, because I know that there's been many benefits, whether it's learning different coping skills or setting boundaries. empowering the best version of yourself, because we can always make improvements, just like we hope this King roster makes improvements. If you're thinking about making or starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire, get matched with your licensed therapist. You could switch therapists anytime if you're not gelling at no additional charge. So stop comparing and start focusing with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/THPN to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/THPN. So,
the other thing that they haven't, rest of the depth that they haven't signed another forward. I think there was a big need for a scoring forward, and I think we can all acknowledge any sort of top 6 forward is not happening.
Yeah.
But why do I do this to myself?
Where are you going with this, Joe?
There is still a right shot forward who can score. Like, he's not like a great player, but he's also not a bad player.
Does his name rhyme with Schmeron?
It doesn't. He signed.
No, he got signed.
Oh, he did sign? Okay.
And so evolving.
Does it rhyme with schlong?
It does. Very much rhyme with schlong.
That's all I can think of. I don't know something like that.
Evolving Hockey has Daniel Sprong's contract at 3 years, 3.78. That would be a tick rich for LA right now because they decided to give money to Joel Edmondson. But on a 1-year deal, they have him at 1.79, which they can squeeze that in. And Daniel Sprong can shoot the puck. He can score. And you're talking for a team that is kind of missing that part of it. Again, I don't think it's going to happen because it's the Kings, but there's worse ways to go there. And I think he's not old, but he's a veteran. Right, he's been around the league. He's 27, but I think he could add a little bit more stability. Like, you put him in that top 6 instead of Laferriere, for example. Like I said, we're bullish on Laferriere, but Daniel Sprong is a little bit more of a proven NHL offensive player. Hey, just throwing the name out there is all I'm doing.
Yeah. No, I would expect them to bring in some kind of even training camp invite or something, because you look at the depth. I mean, it's just Sammy Fagemo is the only one we're really penciling in as the 13th forward, and that's including Alex Turcotte, who aforementioned gets hurt all the time. Akil Thomas, another young player who also has dealt with injuries. Yeah,
and Trevor Lewis.
How much knocking on wood do I have to do here, guys? You guys keep throwing out the I word over there.
Sorry, yeah.
And everybody right now, Puckpedia has all the people that we've signed. Right now, we have 22 out of 23. One of the 3 goalies is going to go down. I fully assume England's going to go down. So we have a little bit more room on the NHL than just the 2.9, but that's what they have right now and total available cap if they keep a 23 man. And last year they didn't do that. So there's still some things that they can do on that. Yeah.
So just to piggyback off of that, Randy, I'm glad you brought that up. So for the hell of it, I signed Kaliev to $1 million. I made sure Fagemo's on the NHL roster. I put Moverari and I put England down, and I signed Arthur, like I said, Kaliev to $1 million. So really, I have 23. So I have 2 extra forwards. I have a 13th and a 14th forward, and I have an extra D in Burrows, and there's 1.3 still in space. Now that's because I gave Spence $1.5 million. But if they wanted to give him, if there's a $3 million deal in there, then that eats up the rest of that cap space. But I guess to the point you're making, Randon, is there is a little bit here. It's not a lot, but it's enough to where they can at least carry extra players if they wanted to. And again, I've got Kaliev at $1 million. I don't think anybody expects him to be around. So you feel like somebody else, to Russ's point, there could be a more veteran option that comes in. I don't know. But I just think of when you're looking at a 4th line of hold your breath that these kids stay healthy, right? And Thomas and Turcotte, and then you've got Lewis, who is what he is. There's risk there.
Mm-hmm. And there's risk with our sanity for the whole season. So I think we're all I think we're all for it.
And I'll try to be more like I don't want it to come across that way, Randon. But like
you expected more. Last season didn't go how anybody wanted. We had an opportunity to correct it. We didn't correct it. We're doing the same thing over again. I get it, Joe. I get it. And here at Hockey Royalty, we're not going to give you the cookie cutter team only direction. But I've known you for a while, Joe. I deserve the right to give you a little chin music, So I'm going to do that. I'm going to Tyler Skeens that 103 mile-an-hour fastball right at the dome piece. Let you know I'm still here. I think it's going to be an interesting season, and I think the storyline that's already emerging with our offseason talks is going to be value. How much value are they going to get from the youngins? What kind of value are we overpaying for mediocre play on some people? Are we going to be clogging up roster spots with Trevor Lewis for 82 games? Or is he more of a depth piece now? I think value is going to be huge because if Clark's making $850 or $900 and he's playing at a $4 million level, or Spence or vice versa, I think it's going to be very interesting with how this team rolls out. And we're going to have many more tin hat episodes coming up on this offseason. And then camp's going to be starting up and everything like that. So no need to dive into a 2-hour episode tonight. But how do you guys feel so far after the offseason and maybe a 1 sentence or 2 sentence?
I'm very excited, actually, compared to previous years, because it feels like we're fully diving into the youth, and Quinton Byfield playing a full year of center at the center position probably gets me more excited than I would be if he was still on the first line, because I feel like he can carry a line himself. And I was looking at some of the stats not to go over your 1 or 2 sentence ask here, Brandon. I was going over his stats, and I was kind of trying to figure out, like, how can I find Byfield just at center? But I went on naturalstatric.com and looked at the line tool, and I just took him away from any playing time with Deneau, any playing time with Kopitar, and any playing time with Dubois. And they're very favorable. 72% expected goal share. And this is in 80 minutes of time. 72% expected goal share, and high danger chances were 16-4 in his favor. So I'm very excited to see what a line centered by Quinton Byfield can do, especially if he's got players like Warren Foegele and Kevin Fiala on his wings. I think that can be a great line that the Kings weren't able to lean on as far as scoring production compared to last year. So,
Russ, did you feel like him signaling out Kevin Fiala kind of points to them being paired together to start the season?
It seems like that's kind of already been in place. I mean, from everything we've heard from Rob Blake talk about it, and I know I've read Zach Dooley's articles. He talks to the players too, and Rob Blake after the free agency. It certainly feels like, I mean, we know how Jim Hiller is, just even in the short time he was interim head coach, how line changes can change in one period, let alone a game or two. So it certainly seems like the line of the top line will be Laferriere, Kopitar, Kempe. Then you got Moore, Deneau, Janot. Then you have Fiala, Byfield, Foegele, and then the third line of whatever's left of Akil Thomas, Alex Turcotte, Trevor Lewis, Sema Fagemo, which I like.
I'm going to try to be more like, what Russ said before. I mean, you could make a case that this team is better because they didn't get what they were expecting out of Dubois. We'll see how Byfield shifts back to center does. I mean, I'm pretty optimistic about it. I don't have too many concerns. It's just he was so good as a winger. But again, I'm not exactly, I think he's going to be fine down the middle. And yeah, like Edmondson is better than Englund. He's probably not $3 million better than Englund, but he is better than Englund. We don't really know what Gavrikov has been glued to Matt Roy.
Yeah.
So that is something that's a little different. How he responds to what we assume will be Jordan Spence, but I guess we'll see. Again, I think that'll be okay. I think that will be fine.
They had good numbers together last year in those times that they played.
Yeah. I think they'll be fine, but that is, I guess something to just keep in the back of your mind. The goaltending is what it is. I don't think it's going to be any better. I don't think it's going to be any worse. I think it should be, if they get this about the same. Actually, no, I shouldn't say that. I do think it comes back a little bit just because they had like one of the league's best goaltending last year. They were top 5 in the league. I just don't think they're going to get that again. They might, but I think it's a little silly to expect that. And I have to try to set aside the abhorrent contracts that they've given out and just try to look at, okay, is the on ice product going to be better? And I think there's potential for it to be.
I mean, Joel Edmondson has more than 30 career games, which is what England had, right? So
the thing with that, and I'll get there. I mean, it's only July. I had a few more months to kind of let this settle in. I mean, you
are wearing black for a reason. It's your funeral.
I want you. How about this, Joe? I want you to sell us on Joel Edmondson and the contract. Find positives. What will, or not the contract. What will his impact be in a positive mindset on the ice compared to maybe England? He's thinking.
I honestly think he's a little better than England in that I think he'll skate better than England. He'll move the puck a little bit better than England.
He's a veteran. He's a veteran.
Pretty low bars, but
he's a veteran. So like playing with Clark and like pointing out things on the ice, like he's a veteran in that aspect where England was not.
I mean, there may be like I don't want to overlook that. I also don't want to overstate it, but I don't want to overlook that could be something.
Okay, that's good. That's good first. That's good first start.
Yeah, I like it.
First start. You know what's also
$5 million, easy.
Al Smith comes in here with a 15.
I'm trying here, chat. I'm trying.
Al Smith comes in here with a $15 holla. How much do we expect from Kopi and Kempe when QB is not driving that line?
So that's actually what I was. I feel like this is
Al.
kind of an elephant in the room that we haven't even discussed yet. Is what is Andrzej Kopitar going to be able to bring at what? He's 37, 38 years old now. I mean, we all just kind of assume it's just going to be the same Andrzej Kopitar. He hasn't really shown any reason to regress a little bit as being the top end player he was. I mean, there's still people calling for him to be a Selke winner last year, which I thought was still kind of crazy. But even then, we're 2 years away from him winning when the Lady being. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't think anybody's really expecting him to be a top line center. I mean, if he is and still produces like one, I feel like that's a huge win, especially now at getting only paid $7 million, because I thought he was still performing at a $10 million level the last few years of his contract. So, I mean, if Kopitar can still be Andrzej Kopitar, I mean, we've seen Kempe and Kopitar be good together even without Byfield just 2 years ago. That was when Kempe had his 40-goal season. So if that can be the case, then, hey, maybe you got something there.
Does Fogle have an opportunity on that line? Like,
I think
the amount
he does.
of pace that he plays with, and so does Kempe. Like, does he have an opportunity on that line over Laferriere?
I think he does. I really do.
Yeah, Fogle is kind of got maybe a little bit like Alex Iafallo type with probably more production, or maybe a lot more production. And you see Kopitar kind of lean a little or favor those players a little bit more.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, to Al's question, Kopitar, we don't know. I should say we don't know, but like, what is it without Byfield? And if you just isolate last season at 5-on-5, Byfield and Kopitar. So if you look at Byfield without Kopitar, they were 53% Corsi together. Kopitar was 52 without Byfield. Byfield was 57 without Kopitar. That matches the expected goals. They were 52.8, 53, we'll call it, when they were together. Kopitar was slightly less, basically the same, 52.5. So whatever, it's the same. Where Byfield was 63% without Kopitar. So I think it's a very, very fair question. It's just looking at, again, really, really quick with and without numbers there. Is there somebody that can, kind of help drive the line? And I don't know that Laferriere is that. Where I do think Fogle, again, maybe I'm a little more bullish. I think Fogle has a little bit more of that playmaker element to his game, along with the speed and being able to get in on forechecks, not unlike Quinton Byfield. I don't mean to compare Fogel to Byfield, but like stylistically, I don't think it's crazy when you look at how hard he skates, his wheels, his creativity. I think he's an underrated playmaker. Like I do think there's a match there, because I look at, if they move Byfield out, I feel like Fogel can really slide kind of right in and be a similar-ish player, maybe at least more so than Laferriere.
I think there's more speed on that line than, I mean, Byfield's quick, but Fogel's one of the quickest guys on the ice. Or am I thinking, oh, that's McLeod. Never mind. I'm thinking of
Fogel's quick too. He's like
Fogel is too.
My thing is this, like you look at like the Edmonton Oilers have two top 10 centers. And then you have a lot of guys. So like he's getting pushed down in the lineup.
Yep.
What if he is a value at $3.5 million? Because he's going to get more opportunity and play higher up in the lineup.
Very well could.
His value at $3.5 million. I mean, he was fourth on that team in scoring at 5-on-5, and that was behind McDavid, Draisaitl, and Hyman. So he's good. I've said that. He's always been a good player, and you can see like he's like the opposite of Dubois in terms of like how you watch a player. It's like Dubois, it's like you see like almost laziness and lackadaisical with his skating ability. Fogel's just constantly moving. He's got a motor to him all over the ice.
And what made, like, what was Byfield's role on that line was a lot of that.
Mm-hmm.
That right. And I think I get it starting Laferriere there, and I get it with if they want to go other ways, but I really do think that we could see Fogel up there, and I don't think it's crazy. But it's a great question from Al, and it's something that's been not talked about enough. Is eventually Father Time's coming. It hasn't yet, and it's awesome, and we are all thankful for that. But at some point, expectations are going to have to shift a little bit. Is he going to perform as a top end center? And I think the King, and you're seeing the Kings kind of not so subtly talk about this in a way. I think I don't think it's like necessarily directed at Kopitar, but they don't talk about like top line, top six. They always call it a top 9 now, which is a little lame for me, because let's be honest, the best teams have a top line and or a top 6, right? Like Edmonton, it's pretty clear cut who their top lines are. You look at Florida, you look at these top teams in Colorado, Dallas, like there's because at the end
what if our second line is that much better though? Like you look at like Quinton Byfield, Janot, and not Quinton Byfield, Quinton Byfield, Fiala, and Fogel. I mean, that's a lot of pace. That's a lot of speed as well. If they do that,
it is. It's just when I think of the best teams in general, they're going to have like you. And I get it, like the whole like, oh, we don't have a top line. We have 3 first lines. No, you don't. Like there's a team that has a top line. What I mean by that is like when push comes to shove, who's on the ice in the final minutes. Right. Who are you putting on the ice? It's your top line. And can that top line produce like a top line? Like that's what it's all about. And that's what the Kings kind of haven't really had.
Well, maybe we will with some value. The Q value comes up, the Fiala value comes up.
I think if they wanted to really separate these pairs and really get a top line, just put your 3 best players together. Put Fiala, Byfield, and Kempe on the line together. See what happens. I think that you get some fireworks. I don't think Kopitar would ever want that, because I'm sure he wants Kempe on his wing. But man, I mean, if you're looking for production, Fiala, Byfield, and Kempe.
I think Russ is speaking the truth right here. That somebody in the organization needs to come to terms with, and it's like, because if you look at it again, the whole depth thing, that's fine. Like you need depth to win. But it's not enough. Like you need star power, and right now the Kings are spreading. They think by spreading out their star power down the lineup is going to do the trick, and it's not. It's failed 3 years in a row against Edmonton, who has legitimate star power at the top of the lineup, because the Kings can't stop them. The Kings have no answer to either stop them or score with them, and so you're not going to be able to stop them. You need to be able to score and outscore them. Vancouver tried to stop them. You can't do it. You have to be able to score with them. And I think a line that you just threw out there, Russ, that has some potential to do some damage. Now, the counter from everybody will be, well, it's going to weaken the rest of the lineup. Who cares? Like, if you like, what's the difference? If you've got Kopitar on your second and Dano on your third, and you've got more mixed in there, Fogel on, if you got more with Dano, Fogel with Kopitar, Laferriere with Kopitar, and that's good enough. Those are fine broken up second and third lines. That's how they can really go if you've got a top line that can do damage like you just put out there. I really think that's a great way to go about it, Russ.
Put your 3 best players in the ice together. I mean, we love Kopitar, but we got to be honest with this. He's probably not a better player right now than what Byfield. I mean, he wasn't statistically last year with Byfield, and in terms of the stats you even just mentioned, Byfield was a much better player away from Kopitar. So Kempe, we all think he's one of the better wingers in the NHL. Same thing with Fiala, who's considered one of the best playmakers in the NHL. Well, if that's the case, put your best playmaker with your best scorer and your best centerman and just see what happens. Maybe you got some magic together, because we've seen Kopitar produce with, I mean, he's elevated the game. Alex Iafallo. Look at what Iafallo did in Winnipeg last year. He was nobody. He couldn't score at all. And now if that's the case, if they're really trying to get away from Kopitar and really lean into this youth movement, then give Byfield 20-plus minutes a night. Give Kopitar 18 minutes a night.
Yes.
And let the young guys fly. And maybe you can find a little bit more production from Kopitar in a lesser role. Maybe you got him a third line role where he's playing with Akil Thomas.
He can be a second line center. There's nothing wrong. He can play 2C.
Exactly. I would like to see, because I mean, I'm the biggest Laferriere guy, and I mean, but him on the fourth line would be great, because I feel like he could carry that fourth line with an Alex Turcotte and Trevor Lewis.
Or Russ, so that's fine. Or that, and have Akil Thomas play a little bit higher. That's fine. But like, what's better, like Kopitar with Fogel and Laferriere on a second line, or Kopitar with Fogel or Kopitar with Laferriere expected to be your first line?
Yeah,
you see, exactly. I'm going with that. Like,
yeah. You're limiting your upside, right? Your thing you always say. Like, if you're gonna just try to spread out the talent, no, just when there's 2 minutes left, you're only gonna run 2 lines anyway. Like, look what the Oilers did. They played 5 guys the last 5 minutes of the game every time. But obviously it's a talent differential there. But yeah, I mean, if you're the Kings and you just score a goal, you're down 3-2 with 2 minutes left, you're going to need to put your top guys out there. And top guys, just put Byfield, Kempe, and Fiala together and see what happens.
I think you're right.
I didn't bring my tinfoil hat for this segment, so we're going to have to button this up. Otherwise, we could really get into it. What is our best line here is our fans. So thank you guys for joining us tonight. Please hit that like button on the way out. You can find all of our articles at hockeyroyalty.com. Follow us on X at hockey_royalty, Rando Commando 24, at NHL Russell, at JW Petterino, at Kopitar4HOF. Thank you for our wonderful sponsors here at the Hockey Podcast Network, DraftKings and BetterHelp. Go take advantage of those sponsorships. Really appreciate that. And I forgot to mention our theme song in the beginning. It was brought to you by Azera. Thank you so much, guys, for doing that. Man, off season is middle of the pack. Camp's just right around the corner. I'm excited for the season, and maybe the youth movement finally kicks in the way we want it to. But we got to wrap this one up. And as always on this podcast, go Kings, go.